right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power, and the finals for the 2025 New York Pro just wrapped up. And unsurprisingly, Nick Walker pulled off the victory here, the first ever three-time New York Pro champion, and he has now picked up his Olympia qualification. I think from prejudging to finals, it was pretty clear. There wasn't really a doubt, I don't think, in anybody's mind that Nick was going to win this show. Bonac wound up in second place. Michael Krizo wound up in third. I was a little bit surprised by that. I think Regan slipped a little bit at finals. At prejudging, I really thought Regan would be third, but Regan ended up in fourth. And Sasarati managed to crack that top five with the fifth place spot. So I think the question is now, going into the Olympia, now that Nick has the qualification, I'm assuming there's no chance that Nick is going to miss it a third year in a row. I'm assuming he will be competing, and probably nothing is going to take him out of that show because he was qualified the last 2 years that he did not do the Olympia. But assuming this year he's in and he's not going to miss it, the question now is, where is Nick going to place? Is he going to find himself back in that top three? Does he have a chance to win the Olympia? Some people, like Bob Ciccarello, think he'll never win the Olympia. But it will be interesting to see Nick at the Olympia because we have not seen, at least recently, Nick versus Samson or Nick versus Hottie. We know what happened with Nick versus Derek in Pittsburgh. We know what happened with Nick versus Martin. And really, a lot of the top guys from the Olympia were at that Pittsburgh Pro that Nick beat outside of Derek. But we still don't really know Nick versus Hottie, Nick versus Samson. Will this new version of Nick Walker be able to beat them? And will he look even better at the Olympia than he looked in Pittsburgh and possibly be able to beat Derek this time around? I think the Olympia right now, this year's Olympia in particular, is very interesting because in my mind, there is no clear front runner going into the Olympia. Even though Samson is the defending champion, I still don't think he's the clear front runner. Derek beat him at the Arnold. Derek won the Pittsburgh Pro. Nick Walker is back with a brand new physique. And we really don't know where Hottie fits in this equation. Hottie was runner-up at last year's Olympia. So in my opinion, this year's Olympia is kind of anybody's game. Maybe Samson successfully defends the title. Maybe Derek wins his title back. Maybe Hottie wins his title back. Or maybe we have a new champion again this year, because that's kind of been the trend, you know, basically since the beginning of COVID, is we've had a new champion almost every year. Will 2025 be another one of these years where we have a new champion? That is the question. And could that be Nick Walker? There's one thing I say a lot when it comes to bodybuilding, and that is anything can happen. And that's why I never say never. And I think that's why the clip of Bob Ciccarello saying Nick will never win the Olympia was so, I think that's why it got so much conversation. It generated so much discussion, because literally anything can happen. And I would not say that Nick could never win the Olympia. Does it seem likely? You could say it seems unlikely, but I would never say never. I think anything is possible in bodybuilding, and maybe we could see Nick Walker win the Olympia. He's been saying his entire career that one day he will, and I think it's possible. But it could be possible and also be unlikely, which is kind of what I believe to be the case. Now, I want to talk about Regan Grimes for a minute also, because I don't want to undersell how impressed I was by Regan. After I saw this video from Gilco, the HD video of Regan's individual routine at the prejudging, I was even more impressed by what Regan brought here. And I would even say this might be, I would say this is the best Regan that we've seen to date. And like I said in the prejudging video, and this video here is from the beginning part of prejudging. So like I said in the prejudging video, I think that Regan faded as prejudging went on, and I think he looked better in prejudging than he looked at the finals, at least from what I've seen. And I think that's probably where he slipped down to fourth, because I really thought at one point they were really maybe comparing him against Bonac and Nick for second, and then as prejudging went on, it looked like they were comparing him for third and fourth with Krizo. And I thought he looked better than Krizo at prejudging. Now I can see the argument for Krizo at finals. But I really got to give props to Regan here. I think Regan really put together a very impressive package here. He looked big. He looked imposing. He was in shape. He was conditioned. I just think it's just a little bit of rust from not competing that was making him fade? Because it's been a while since we've seen him on stage. He hasn't been very active in the last couple of years. And I think maybe he was just a little bit rusty because, like I said, you could see him sweating pretty profusely at prejudging. He looked like he was getting tired. His physique looked like it was fading. And I think that's really what cost him here. But even with that being said, I think he looked incredible and I think surprised a lot of people. I would have liked to see him take top 3 here, but even top 4, being compared with Nick Walker, Bonac, and Krizo, for a guy that's been kind of out of the conversation recently, I think is a big feather in Regan's cap, and I think he should be very proud of that. But let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below about the 2025 New York Pro Men's Open Bodybuilding results. Now, next up in the news, unsurprisingly, Rough Diesel Terrence Ruffin wins again the rematch against Jose from Pittsburgh. So now Ruff has won Pittsburgh, and he's won New York. And I believe he originally said he's doing 4 or 5 shows total in the next year, which started with Pittsburgh. And when he announced that, however many months ago that was, I said I think that Ruff will probably win every show that he does going into the Olympia. And after seeing him in New York and seeing him in Pittsburgh, already winning 2 of them, I still believe that to be the case. I was not surprised to see him win here. I think this was a deserved win. I prefer Terrence's shape and structure to Jose's, even though I think Jose brings a very impressive package. I think it's an apples and oranges comparison. Jose comes in, I think, a little bit tighter conditioning. He appears bigger because he's a taller guy. But as far as pure embodiment of classic physique, I really prefer Terrence's physique, and I'm glad to see him constantly getting the nod in comparisons like this because I think that's a good forbearing of things to come at the Olympia. This is what we saw throughout, the glory years of Terrence's career, is him versus Chris, a much bigger guy, a much taller guy. And I like to see situations like this where it appears close and Terrence, being the shorter guy, smaller guy, actually gets the nod. I think that's a good sign for Terrence going into the Olympia. However, I still feel like on the Olympia level, Terrence needs to be tighter. I do think he looked better here in New York than he looked in Pittsburgh, but I still think the conditioning needs to come up a notch to be competitive with guys like Ramon, Urs, Mike Sommerfeld. I think it's just going to have to be a level above what we're seeing from him right now. Because conditioning is important in classic physique. I just would say it's slightly less important than men's open bodybuilding. And I certainly think within the classic physique boundaries, conditioning is less important than structure and flow. Now, in 212, Francisco Barrios actually pulled out the win over Angel Calderon Frias. I was a little bit surprised by that. I thought Angel was going to pull out the victory. Angel took second place. Cody Drobot took third. Luis Estevez took fourth. And Mo Elisa wound up in fifth place there in the 212. And rolling into the final story here, Larry Wheels. So let's talk about a couple of things with Larry. So as you guys know by now, Larry competed first in bodybuilding this morning, where he took fourth place. Not the best showing for bodybuilding. He competed in classic physique, where he won his class, and then he won the overall, which gave him his IFBB Pro card. Now, Larry did actually step up to the plate, and he competed in the Pro Show, the Classic Physique Pro Show. Here's the scorecard right here, where Larry Wheels wound up taking 10th place at his pro debut. So kind of a far reach from an Olympia qualification, but I do admire the fact that he stepped on the pro stage essentially right after stepping off, winning his pro card, and made his pro debut the same day. I think the Olympia qualification would have been a stretch had he won that here. It would have been a big deal, but if I were Larry, I would just be happy with the fact that I won my pro card. Now, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of videos or photos because there was no live stream. There's not a whole lot of videos or photos of the pro classic physique class, or really for that matter of the amateur classic physique class where Larry won his overall. So I kind of tried to scrape together the pictures and videos that I could. And from what I can see, it's kind of what I expected. I mean, like I said, I think that Larry's physique fits better in classic physique than it does in bodybuilding. I think that's why you see that reflected in the difference between these two shows. Bodybuilding, he was fourth. Classic physique, he wins the whole thing and gets the overall and the pro card. And I was thinking about this when I was watching one of the posing videos of Larry from this show, and it kind of reminds me of Wesley Vissers. I'm not saying he's on the level of Wesley Vissers, but like structurally, Larry has a massive upper body. He's got a crazy back. He's really wide throughout the shoulders. His upper body is huge, and his legs aren't bad. They just don't quite match his upper body, and he's a taller guy. He's a little bit lankier. He's got longer legs, and that, I think, is better suited to classic physique than it is bodybuilding. And I think that's why you can see a guy like Wesley Vissers, even though he has that imbalance between his upper and lower body, he still does really well as a classic physique competitor, and that's why I think Larry fits better in classic, being such a tall guy and having kind of some of those same characteristics that Wesley has, I think are a little bit more flattering to the physique in that division versus bodybuilding. And I also wanted to note here, Larry put up a post where he essentially calls out Sam Sulek right after he won his pro card, and he says, "Sam, when's your next show?" Implying that he wants to compete in whichever show Sam chooses to do. And I personally, I think that would be an internet-breaking show, is if, well, Larry just made his pro debut, but if Sam made his pro debut and Larry was in the same show, I think that would be, it would be awesome. Because I think, unfortunately, a lot of times some of the smaller classic physique shows don't really get the same exposure or don't really get the same limelight that even some of the smaller open bodybuilding shows do. So if they picked a smaller show, which they might not, because I really do think that Sam will make his pro debut at the Arnold at the Arnold Classic Pro, and maybe Larry will too. Maybe Larry will get the Arnold invitation. But that's kind of the recap of the day. Again, these are just kind of the pictures and videos that I scraped together from the event. There wasn't a whole lot out there, unfortunately, so there's not a whole lot you can really see of Larry competing as a pro. But like I said, overall, top 10 at his pro debut in classic physique, won the overall class and his class, obviously, in amateur classic physique to win the pro card. But he also did bodybuilding, didn't do as well in bodybuilding, took fourth there. But overall, I think very exciting weekend. Nick Walker wins the New York Pro. Terrence Ruffin wins classic physique. Francisco Barrios wins 212. Larry Wheels gets his pro card and makes his pro debut. I mean, if you're a bodybuilding fan, you really can't ask for much more than this in one weekend. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys, appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.